Hi, my name is Valda Ford. I am the CEO of the Center for Human Diversity, and the Center for Human Diversity is an organization designed especially to do more with the ideas of diversity, inclusion, and cultural competency. Too often we have people who think that diversity is simply the ability to have a variety of people in the organization. Instead, it's so much more. It's about maximizing the potential of all people in the agency. I've been a member of NSA for several years now, and currently I am the outgoing chair of the Diversity PEG, the Professional Experts Group. The Diversity PEG is one that's designed especially for NSA members who are either diversity and inclusion practitioners or those who are more interested in making sure that diversity and inclusion is a part of their training, seminars, workshops, and consulting, have the opportunity to work with peers, to learn more, to give more. So we support each other. We're kind of a mini mastermind group all on our own. I grew up in North Carolina in a time of segregation. It was a very interesting time. There are many people who will say to me, "Oh wow, I feel so sorry for you because you grew up during those times." But I say it was a great chance for me to see the real continuum of what the USA has to offer. Growing up as a little girl, of course, I did not have the opportunities to use the same bathroom, drink from the same water fountains. I was always told what I couldn't do, and that I had to behave a certain way in order to make sure that not only did I not create problems for myself, but that I did not create problems for my family. So it was very important for me to learn how to stay in my lane. It was very interesting, though, that as I got into high school, those things changed. There was forced integration in the schools. It was an opportunity to find out how to live really in the American society. All along the way, though, I had some great experiences with people who had walked with Dr. Martin Luther King, people who had been beaten, people who had been attacked just because of who they were. But the interesting thing was getting the chance to find out that even though there were people who automatically didn't like me because of the way that I looked, there were more people who really despised the fact that that was going on. So it's an opportunity for me to learn that the human experience is one that cannot be segmented. We cannot determine ahead of time that just because a person looks a certain way, that they'll have a certain attitude or way of being and doing. So that was one of the most important lessons that I ever learned. My healthcare career was actually, I'd have to say that the reason that I went into healthcare is multifaceted. First, it was a means to an end. I needed a job. I wanted one that I could be sure that I'd always have a job. Growing up in High Point, North Carolina, with the furniture industry being a little bit fickle, when the economy goes bad, the town's economy goes bad. And healthcare is one of those recession-proof industries. So I thought it through and decided that's what I'd do. But while I was still in nursing school, my young son actually died because of negligence and malpractice. And so I had, unfortunately, a very first-hand experience of the healthcare field. While it's supposed to help and its credo is to do no harm, unfortunately, that was what happened. So I got involved with public health and protecting vulnerable populations, being a person who advocated for those who did not have a voice. Because in that instance, the diversity that was a problem for me was that I was uneducated. I was not a part of the system. I was not taken seriously when I had a question or a concern. I was always told, "You don't know what you're talking about, we're the professionals." So I've spent a lot of my career talking to people about communication and how it is very important to pay attention to the needs of those who have come to you for help, and not to have that patronizing, paternalistic attitude that we know what we're doing and you just need to sit in the corner. One of the greatest challenges in the healthcare arena as it relates to diversity and cultural competency is that we don't have the opportunity to decide who walks in the door and what their skill sets are going to be when they come. Imagine that if you live in a city like New York or Los Angeles, or for the most part, almost any city in the USA now, there's so much diversity and there's so many people who've come to this country from other countries. Surely 9% of the population living in the USA now was born outside of the USA, and 10% of our population speaks a language other than English at home. So as a healthcare professional, when someone walks up to me, not only do I need to have the requisite skills to care for whatever injury, illness, or infirmity that they're experiencing, I also have to have the ability to determine what language they're speaking, to determine if their beliefs about the healthcare system are the same as mine, to understand that if I go to put a blood pressure cuff on them, they may consider that an assault because perhaps they come from a place where they've never actually seen a healthcare practitioner. They've never been to a doctor. They've only dealt with lay people who have folk medicine, who sometimes are actually quite adept at what they're doing. But if you walk into an emergency room and immediately I get a hold of you and put you on a stretcher and start to put needles in your arm and take blood and do any number of things, that might be shocking and embarrassing, humiliating, or very frightening to people who are not aware of what's going on. As a healthcare provider, I don't have the opportunity to say, well, I can't take this one, please put them to the side. They're there for us. We're also governed by laws. We are governed by laws and statutes. One in particular is the culturally and linguistically appropriate services standards, which says that any person who walks into the hospital or the healthcare center has the right for me to make sure that they get what they need. That means linguistically, that means culturally. So if they need an interpreter, and I live in small town USA, I'm not likely to have 3 or 4 or 5 interpreters right at my side. So what policies and procedures do I make in order to make sure that they still get the same care? Let's take, for instance, someone who comes in with a heart attack. Or let's take, for instance, someone comes into the emergency room. Their face is red, they're sweating, they're clutching their chest. They are unable to speak English. My first question is, what's going on? As a healthcare provider, if I look at the textbook symptoms, I'm going to assume that they're having a heart attack. What happens then? If they can't tell me, I'm going to take them into the emergency room, run all the tests, very expensive tests, do a number of things, including perhaps give clot-busting drugs. The next thing that's going to happen is we're going to wait to see what happens, and in a few days we will be able to determine by those lab tests if the heart attack actually took place. Now, if that same person comes in sweating, clutching their chest, in severe pain, obviously, and it happens to be a man who was playing basketball with his 17-year-old son and just got pummeled with an elbow to his chest, we're going to do the same treatments because we do defensive medicine and we don't know what to do. So I would suggest to that hospital that they have the ability to find out what's going on with the patient. One, they're not wasting resources. They're not terrifying someone who simply has an inflammation from having an elbow to the chest. And certainly they're not setting themselves up for negligence and malpractice suits because they've given care that was not warranted.